AM 1340, FM 92.1, WCSR. Good to have the longtime host of It Is What It Is on WDFN with us. Shawnee B., how you been, brother?
Excellent, Andy. How about yourself, man?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm stoked that you decided to come on tonight. You're so cool in the emails, and we just wanted to get you on the air.
No. I appreciate you guys calling me, man. No, really, thank you.
I want to talk a little bit about what went down with WDFN, and then we'll talk sports if that's okay with you. You get out of bed January 19th. You kiss Jack and your daughter goodbye. You go into the studios. Did you know it was coming on that day, Sean? I get a sense from some of the quotes that maybe you did.
Oh, absolutely. It's the business. That's the first thing that you have to. You have to accept it, and I know a lot of people want to think, oh, it's a Clear Channel thing. It isn't a Clear Channel thing. It's a radio thing. And anybody who's been in this business for a long time knows that. This is a situation, the old adage is you haven't really worked into radio until you've been fired and all that stuff. So, we caught wind that things were going to be going down and all that stuff. And for me personally, it just made sense that they would get rid of me. It really did, for a plethora of reasons. A lot of them really going back to the simple fact that I wasn't under contract past the end of the year. Mm-hmm. That was, my contract was up, and it was one of those things where, we hadn't negotiated a new contract and all that stuff. So it really, again, using common sense and applying that to the equation, I kind of put two and two together and figured out that I would be the guy. And, like I said, hey, I had almost 10 great years there. I don't have anything bad to say about anybody, and I'm not even being PC. A lot of people, well, don't burn bridges.
Right.
And, though I believe that's true, I don't have anything negative to say about anybody. It's not my style. It's not who I am, and I wish everybody the best of luck. I guess it was just time to move on,
Shawnee, you throw to the inauguration, and you said a great quote in the newspaper. I never thought my last words would be throwing it to the inauguration. Did you already know before you left the airways, or did they tell you shortly thereafter?
They didn't tell me, but I knew. At about 11 o'clock, the whole last hour of my show, it was a foregone conclusion. There's no other way to say it. Without getting too in-depth, there were just a certain amount of things that happened behind the scenes. Right at about 11 o'clock, and my show was on until noon, that just, it was as obvious as the nose on your face. It really was. Mm-hmm. But again, it's the business, and there's that party that wanted to say, hey, goodbye, and all that stuff. But for whatever reason, they frown upon that stuff. So kind of stunk, signing off the air that day, knowing full well I wasn't going to be on the next day.
Well, the part that stinks about that, Sean, is that people like me, and you had so many people that listen to you on a daily basis, and Stoney and Wojo and the whole gang, you really feel like you get to know the talk show host. You know what I'm saying? We don't know you, but we feel like we do. So when we don't, we don't get a goodbye, there's no closure.
But number two, Andy, I'm telling you, I feel the same way.
Right.
I got to know so many people. There were so many people that I had, say for example, email correspondence with for 10 years, or people that that called me on my show that I had correspondence with for, again, almost 10 years. And you think of all the life changes over the course of a decade. For me, I went from being a guy that just got married to a guy that, is in his late 30s. Now I'm 38 years old, and I have 2 children. So, as cheesy as it sounds, I think a lot of us grew up together. And WDFN kind of had that effect on this area as well. I said it in one of the newspapers. I forget which one. I was a fan of the Fan long before I worked there.
Right.
I remember going to school and, on my way to school and on my way home from school, listening to the Fan going, man, would it be cool to work at a station like that one day? But, it happens. It's the business, and you move on.
We're talking to Sean Baligian on AM and FM WCSR Hillsdale. We did give you the email address earlier, acbrownie98@yahoo.com, if you have questions for Shawnee B. And we had a couple that came in earlier, and if it's okay, Sean, we'll get to those a little bit later.
Absolutely.
But, Shawnee, Stoney and Wojo, an institution. Stoney was there from the very beginning, the afternoon show from 3 to 6. Every day I'd get out of work. I'd go home and listen to those guys, and just not being able to hear the theme song anymore. You know what I mean? Those guys, I was stunned, frankly, that they just totally cleaned house. And I heard the public reactions of Stoney and Wojo. Maybe you can give us some insight. Were they just totally stunned when this went down?
Yeah, in a word, yes. I think they both, they didn't see it coming. I hate to repeat myself, but it made sense.
Right.
It made absolute total sense. My contract was up at the end of the year. We didn't even start negotiating. We had a few conversations about it, and I was kind of lukewarm to it for reasons that I'll keep private to myself,
right.
S'il vous plaît. But it was one of those things where I think you're right. Those guys are an institution, and they had almost 2 years left on their contract.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I didn't expect. While I expected personally to be gone, I did not expect that they would blow the shows out.
Uh-huh.
Not in a million years. That was one thing I never saw that coming, and that's what makes me sad. Forget about me, because I know that there are going to be other opportunities out there, and I'm still blessed that I had my finger in a couple different pies here in the Detroit area.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that DFN could be gone, and I hope to God that it isn't. I hope that from this, they rebuild it and it goes back, because I think Detroit is a city that absolutely positively not only deserves but needs two sports stations, and two sports stations that are gonna do a heck of a job in regards to competing against one another. And boy, it was fun for a long time. The quote unquote radio war. It was a fun time, and for me personally, Clear Channel's the only company that I worked for, and I can't say anything negative about them. It's the business, and you move on.
We'll talk about the radio war with 97.1 a little bit later on. I don't know how much you want to get into that, but just talking about, again, the lineup. A while ago, Jamie and Brady were laid off. That came down earlier. You took on a 4-hour show. Now, I work a little bit in radio. I dabble. And I thought to myself, 4 hours every day, trying to plan for 4 hours. That had to be nuts. What was that like for you to come in and have a 4-hour show ready to go every day?
Miserable. I'm not going to mince words for you, Andy. I mean, honest to God, it was miserable. But you know what? Cliche alert, cheesy alert.
Right.
You do what you're told.
Right.
Do what
right.
you're asked, and they asked me, and basically, can you take one for the team? And I gladly took one for the team.
But at that point, when you got held on for 4 hours, Shawnee, you had to think, well, I'm pretty solid. They must like what I'm doing. If they want to extend me for another hour, they must think, that they're going to stick with me. And then to have this come down would be surprising. You've talked about the business part of it, but then you look at guys like Otto, who tried to fill in for a while, Shep, with the Shep Shower and greatest name of a radio show of all time. And I just didn't. I heard that Clear Channel was going to do some cutting, 10% nationwide, but at a lot of those stations, it was behind the scenes people. It wasn't the big marquee names that had the axe fall on them. What was it, do you think? And I don't know again how comfortable you are talking about this, but what was it about WDFN that prompted them to really lop off some of the big name guys?
I don't know.
Uh-huh.
Andy, if I had an answer, I'd tell you.
Right.
And I'm not even trying to take the high road there.
Right.
I'm answering your question as honestly as I can. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things. You're never going to get an explanation from somebody,
right.
Because the decision comes from so high above even the heads here in Detroit. It's not like I'm going to get on the phone and talk to somebody and get a full-fledged answer about it. I don't know. I wish I knew, because like you, I read a few of the articles and whatnot where it talked about how, while there were changes at a lot of stations and unfortunately so many good people lost their jobs, no one seemed to get hit like we got hit. And so I wish I had an answer for that, but I just don't have one. I think part of it is probably, the obvious, and when 97.1 went to the FM, we
right.
couldn't compete.
Right.
I mean, that was the one thing that we, though I don't know how familiar you guys are with the frequencies around here, but I mean, to put it mildly to you, WDFN can probably be heard by, I don't know, maybe 30-40% of the greater metropolitan Detroit area. Whereas you get on an FM signal,
right,
and 100% of the people are going to hear you. So,